The first signs were so subtle that most species missed them entirely. On the outer rim world of Kepler-9, a Drachnid merchant simply stopped mid-sentence during a routine trade negotiation. His eyes glazed over for just a moment before he continued as if nothing had happened. Within days, the entire trading post operated with an eerie efficiency that no one could quite explain. The Nexarians didn't announce their presence with warships or ultimatums. They came silently, invisibly, their neural tendrils weaving through the fabric of civilized space like poison through water. By the time the Galactic Council recognized the threat, entire sectors had already fallen under their influence. The Aldarians were the first major civilization to recognize what was happening. Their telepathic abilities allowed them to sense the strange emptiness where once vibrant minds had been. But even their warnings came too late. The Council's emergency session dissolved into chaos as delegates realized that several of their own had already been compromised. Admiral Zara Voss of the Centaurian Defense Fleet watched the security footage for the 100th time. The Council members moved with an unnatural synchronization, their movements precise and purposeful. Gone were the usual political squabbles and posturing. In their place was a terrible, perfect harmony. "It's like watching a dance," her second-in-command, Captain Thex, observed. "Every movement coordinated, every action planned." "That's exactly what terrifies me," Voss replied, her four eyes narrowing. "We're not dealing with an invasion force. We're dealing with an infection." The Nexarians' true form remained unknown. Some theorized they were pure energy beings. Others suggested they existed in dimensions beyond normal spacetime. What was clear was their method. They didn't destroy civilizations, they absorbed them. Every conquered world continued to function, often more efficiently than before. But the inhabitants became nothing more than biological components in a vast, interconnected network. The most advanced civilizations fell first. The Aldarians' telepathic abilities, once their greatest strength, became their undoing. Their entire homeworld fell silent in a single day. The mechanoids, despite their artificial bodies, discovered too late that their quantum processors were perfectly compatible with Nexarian neural patterns. The Council's military response proved futile. How do you fight an enemy that turns your own forces against you? Traditional warfare became impossible when every captured soldier instantly became another node in the Nexarian network. The more sophisticated the species, the more quickly they succumbed. Voss's fleet became one of the last organized resistance forces in the galaxy. They abandoned their home systems, operating from the fringes, watching in horror as world after world fell silent. Their ships were filled with refugees, survivors who had witnessed their entire civilizations transformed into something alien and perfect. New reports from the Orion Arm, Thex announced, his scales dulled with exhaustion. The Prometheus Collective has fallen. Their quantum AI network, it just merged with the Nexarian consciousness. 80 billion minds, gone in an instant. Voss slammed her fist against the command console. The Prometheus Collective had been their last hope. Their technological superiority had seemed like their best defense against the Nexarians. Instead, it had made them perfect targets. "What's left?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Not much. A few scattered resistance groups. Some primitive worlds the Nexarians haven't bothered with yet. And..." Thex hesitated. "And Earth." Voss turned all four eyes toward her second-in-command. "The humans. They're barely interstellar. Their technology is centuries behind the collectives. What makes you think they stand a chance?" "That's just it," Thex said, pulling up a holographic display. "Look at these readings. The Nexarians have made several attempts to infiltrate their system. Every time, they failed. We don't know why." The data showed multiple Nexarian probe signatures entering the Sol system. Each time, they approached Earth, and each time, they withdrew. No other world had repelled them even once. "Get me everything we have on human neural patterns," Voss ordered. "There has to be something different about them." The research took days. What they discovered changed everything. Human brains were unique in the galaxy, not for their sophistication, but for their chaos. Where other species' neural patterns showed elegant organization, human minds were a storm of contradictions and irregular patterns. "It's beautiful," the ship's xenobiologist explained, gesturing to the comparative scans. Every other sentient species evolved toward neural efficiency. Humans, they're practically random. Their thoughts bounce between logic and emotion, conscious and unconscious, order and chaos. The Nexarians can't establish a foothold because there's no pattern to latch onto. You're saying humanity's greatest defense is that they're messy thinkers? Voss asked incredulously. Exactly. The Nexarians operate on perfect patterns, perfect synchronization. Human minds are like trying to establish a grid pattern on an ocean during a storm. For the first time in months, Voss felt something close to hope. Set course for the Sol system. All ships. We need to reach Earth before the Nexarians figure out how to adapt. The journey was treacherous. They lost 3 ships to Nexarian patrols, their crews absorbed into the ever-growing neural network. But finally, Earth appeared on their view screens, a blue-green jewel in the darkness. "They're hailing us," Thex reported. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages, chaotic and uncoordinated, just like their minds." Voss stood before the communications array, gathering her thoughts. How do you tell a species that they might be the galaxy's last hope precisely because they think in ways that more advanced civilizations would consider primitive? "This is Admiral Zara Voss of the Free Fleet," she began. "We come seeking alliance against an enemy that has already conquered most of the known galaxy. We come to Earth not because you are the strongest or the most advanced, but because you are different, because your minds work in ways that our enemy cannot comprehend or control." There was a long pause. Voss imagined the chaos of human governments trying to process this information, their disagreements and debates, their fear and curiosity all warring within their wonderfully messy minds. Finally, a response came. Not from a single world government or unified command, but from dozens of different sources, each offering help in their own way. It was exactly the kind of beautiful chaos that they needed. As Voss coordinated with Earth's military leaders, she realized that humanity's resistance to the Nexarians went beyond their neural patterns. Their entire history was filled with adapting to the unexpected, thriving in chaos, and finding strength in diversity rather than uniformity. The Nexarians had conquered the galaxy by imposing perfect order. Perhaps the only way to fight them was with perfect chaos, and humanity, with their contradictions and complexity, their simultaneous capacity for logic and madness, might be the perfect weapon against an enemy that could only understand perfection. The war for the galaxy was about to enter a new phase, and for the first time since the Nexarians appeared, Admiral Voss allowed herself to believe they might actually have a chance. The first Nexarian probe entered Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Unlike their swift conquests of other worlds, this was a cautious approach. The probe's neural transmitters activated, reaching out to interface with the minds below. It found chaos. 7 billion human minds buzzed with activity, each one a unique storm of thoughts, emotions, and contradictions. Where other species' minds had been orderly gardens ready for harvesting, human consciousness was an untamed wilderness. The probe's systems, designed to impose order on logical thought patterns, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer randomness of human neural activity. Commander Sarah Chen watched the probe's descent from the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, one of Earth's hastily retrofitted warships. Admiral Voss stood beside her, all 4 eyes fixed on the tracking display. "They're testing us," Chen observed, "learning our patterns." "That's what worries me," Voss replied. "The Nexarians always adapt. They've never failed to conquer a world once they set their sights on it. Your species' resistance is unprecedented, but it may not last." The probe's neural assault intensified. Across the globe, humans reported headaches, strange dreams, and momentary dissociative episodes. But none succumbed to the perfect synchronization that had claimed so many other species. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenoneurologist, worked alongside alien scientists in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her team had been studying the neural patterns of rescued survivors, trying to understand why humans were different. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a comparative brain scan. When the Nexarians attempt to impose their control pattern, other species' minds try to adapt to it. Their neural pathways reorganize themselves to match the Nexarian frequency. But human brains, she switched to a human subject scan. "We resist. Our minds actively generate interference patterns, like mental static." "Inefficient," remarked her Aldarian colleague, one of the few who had escaped their world's fall. "Your species wastes so much neural energy on random thoughts, emotional processing, dreams. That inefficiency is saving us," Maya countered. "We're too messy to control. Our emotions, our contradictions, our ability to hold conflicting thoughts simultaneously, it all creates a kind of natural defense system." The probe's attack intensified. In major cities, the more organized and logical members of society reported stronger symptoms. But for every mind that began to synchronize, 1,000 others remained chaotically, beautifully human. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of human teenagers, their brains still in the midst of natural developmental chaos, proved completely immune to Nexarian influence. Their neural patterns were so erratic, so full of hormonal fluctuations and emotional extremes, that the probe's systems couldn't establish even a momentary connection. "It's not just resistance," Maya explained to the Joint Earth-Free Fleet Command. "Their minds are actually disrupting the Nexarian control signals, like feedback in an audio system, but on a neural level." Military leaders from both Earth and the Free Fleet saw the potential immediately. If human minds could disrupt Nexarian control, perhaps they could use that disruption offensively. The probe made its final attempt at dawn. This time, Earth was ready. Thousands of volunteers, specifically chosen for their highly emotional and creative neural patterns, focused their thoughts toward the probe. Artists, musicians, people with ADHD, teenagers, anyone whose mind naturally generated the kind of chaos that interfered with Nexarian signals. The probe's systems crashed. For the first time in recorded history, a piece of Nexarian technology had been completely defeated. "This is just the beginning," Voss warned as they examined the probe's remains. "They'll send more. They'll try to adapt. And eventually they'll bring their full force to bear on Earth." She was right. Within days, Nexarian ships began appearing at the edges of the solar system. Not the subtle infiltration vessels they normally used, but massive warships. If they couldn't control humanity, they would attempt to destroy it. Earth's military forces, augmented by Free Fleet technology, prepared for conventional warfare. But their real advantage lay in the human mind itself. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical decision was filtered through the lens of human unpredictability. "We need to weaponize what makes us different," Chen argued in a strategy session. "The Nexarians expect logical responses, perfect patterns. Let's show them how illogical humans can be." The first battle for Earth's orbit demonstrated this new approach. Instead of forming organized battle lines, Earth's ships moved in seemingly random patterns, their crews deliberately embracing tactical chaos. Fighters performed maneuvers that alien military analysts considered suicidal, only to succeed through sheer audacity. The Nexarians, for the first time, found themselves unable to predict their enemies' movements. Their perfect tactical algorithms failed against human intuition and improvisation. But victory came at a cost. Earth lost 30% of its space-based forces in that first engagement. The Nexarians might have been confused by human tactics, but their technological superiority remained overwhelming. "We can't win a war of attrition," Voss stated bluntly in the aftermath. "Even with your immunity to their neural control, they can simply overwhelm us with superior numbers and technology." "Then we change the game," Chen responded. "If we can't beat them conventionally, we find an unconventional solution. Something so crazy, so human, that their perfect minds would never consider it. Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the captured probe's neural interface technology. What if, she proposed, instead of just defending against their control signals, we could reverse them, turn their own perfect patterns against them? The idea was unprecedented. The Nexarians had never faced a species that could not only resist their control but potentially hijack it. But the technical challenges were immense. We'd need to get close to their main control nodes, Voss explained. The ships we've encountered are just extensions. The real Nexarian consciousness, their central network, is somewhere in the core systems they've already conquered. Then that's where we go, Chen declared. Not with a fleet. They'd detect that. But with small teams. Human operators, specifically chosen for their mental chaos, trained to use their natural immunity offensively. The plan was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But as more Nexarian ships arrived in the solar system, it became clear that humanity needed to do more than just defend. They needed to take the fight to the enemy. We'll need volunteers, Voss said. People willing to venture into Nexarian-controlled space, knowing they might never return. You'll have them, Chen assured her. If there's one thing humans excel at, it's volunteering for impossible missions. As Earth's forces continued to hold the line against increasing Nexarian pressure, a new type of warrior began training in secret facilities around the globe. They were chosen not for their physical strength or tactical knowledge, but for the chaos of their minds. Artists, dreamers, rebels, anyone whose thoughts naturally disrupted Nexarian control patterns. The future of the galaxy would depend not on technological superiority or perfect order, but on humanity's greatest gift, their beautiful, unpredictable chaos. The training facility deep beneath the Australian outback looked more like an art studio than a military base. Walls covered in abstract paintings, music ranging from classical to heavy metal playing at all hours. Meditation rooms next to combat simulators. This was where humanity prepared its most unusual warriors for Operation Mindstorm. Captain Marcus Rivera watched his team of Chaos agents prepare for their first deep space mission. A street artist spray painting fractal patterns on a practice target. A Buddhist monk in combat armor, deep in meditation. A teenage hacker with ADHD bouncing between 3 different computer terminals simultaneously. They're not soldiers, Admiral Voss observed, her 4 eyes tracking the unusual activity. That's exactly why they'll succeed, Rivera replied. The Nexarians understand soldiers. They understand order and discipline. They don't understand this. The plan was audacious. Small teams would infiltrate Nexarian-controlled space using captured probe technology, modified to mask the chaos of their human neural patterns. Their target, the Aldarian homeworld, one of the first major civilizations to fall, now a crucial node in the Nexarian network. Dr. Rodriguez had discovered something remarkable about the captured probe's neural interface. It's not just a transmitter, she explained during the final briefing. It's a receiver too. The Nexarians don't just control minds. They absorb them into their network. We can use that connection to inject our own chaos directly into their system. The first team launched under cover of a major space battle, while Earth's conventional forces engaged the Nexarian fleet in seemingly erratic patterns. A modified stealth ship slipped through the chaos. Inside, Rivera and his team of 12 prepared for humanity's most daring operation yet. Lisa Chen, the street artist, painted elaborate mandalas on her combat armor. Art is chaos made beautiful, she explained when Rivera questioned the pre-mission ritual. When we hit their network, I want my chaos to be spectacular. The monk, Brother Thomas, had developed a technique he called weaponized enlightenment, using deep meditation to amplify the natural randomness of human consciousness. The hacker, Joey Martinez, had written algorithms that mimicked the unexpected leaps of his ADHD-enhanced thinking. Their ship, the Trickster, carried technology rebuilt from captured Nexarian probes, modified by human engineers who deliberately ignored efficiency in favor of unpredictable functionality. It shouldn't have worked. By any logical standard, it shouldn't even have flown, but human illogic had become their greatest weapon. They breached Aldarian space using a technique that made Rivera's head hurt just thinking about it. Instead of trying to hide from Nexarian sensors, they'd broadcast so many contradictory signals that the perfect pattern-matching systems simply failed to process their presence. The Aldarian capital, once a center of telepathic culture and artistic achievement, had been transformed into a node of terrible perfection. Millions of former citizens moved in precise patterns, their minds subsumed into the Nexarian network. Remember, Rivera briefed his team as they prepared to land. We're not here to fight them conventionally. Our minds are our weapons. The more chaotic your thoughts, the more disruption you'll cause in their network. They struck at dawn, when the city's activities were at their most predictable. Lissa sprayed her chaos-enhanced paint across Nexarian control surfaces, creating patterns that disrupted their perfect geometric signals. Brother Thomas established a meditation circle that generated waves of consciousness-bending energy. Joey released his randomized algorithms into their computer systems. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The perfectly coordinated movements of the control population began to stutter. Nexarian systems, designed to process information in elegant patterns, encountered human chaos and began to glitch. But the Nexarians weren't defenseless. As the network detected the intrusion, it attempted to adapt. Controlled citizens began converging on the team's position, moving with that terrible synchronized purpose. They're trying to establish order. Rodriguez's voice crackled over their comms from Earth. Push harder. Give them more chaos. Rivera watched in amazement as his team responded. Lisa's art became more wild, more emotionally charged. Brother Thomas began chanting mantras that somehow magnified the team's mental static. Joey's fingers flew across his keyboard, introducing random variables that even he couldn't predict. The Nexarian response became increasingly erratic. Their perfect patterns, encountering waves of human unpredictability, began to break down. Individual Aldarians started showing signs of awakening, their movements becoming jerky, uncoordinated, human. It's working, Rodriguez exclaimed. The chaos is spreading through their network. Their control patterns can't compensate fast enough. But victory came with a price. The mental strain of actively projecting chaos began to take its toll. Lisa's paintings became increasingly frantic. Brother Thomas's chants grew ragged. Joey's algorithms started showing signs of his own fatigue. We can't maintain this level of disruption, Rivera realized. We need to strike at their local control node before we burn out. The node was housed in what had once been the Aldarian High Council chamber. Getting there meant fighting through waves of controlled citizens. Rivera made a choice that only a human commander would consider. They stopped trying to fight tactically. Everyone, embrace the chaos, he ordered. Move without thinking. Act on instinct. Be as human as possible. His team responded magnificently. They abandoned formation, each member moving according to their own internal rhythm. Lissa painted their path forward in swirling patterns that confused Nexarian targeting systems. Brother Thomas's meditation created bubbles of localized chaos. Joey's algorithms turned the city's automated systems against their controllers. They reached the control node as their strength was failing. The central chamber was a nightmare of biological and technological integration, where the stolen minds of millions were processed into the Nexarian network. Now, Rivera commanded, everything you've got, all the chaos, all the humanity you can muster, pour it directly into their systems. The team linked their modified neural interfaces directly to the node. Lisa poured years of artistic passion into the connection. Brother Thomas projected the paradoxes of Zen philosophy. Joey released every random thought his ADHD had ever generated. Rivera contributed his own memories. Love, loss, triumph, failure, all the beautiful messiness of human existence. The node overloaded, not with power, but with pure human chaos. The perfect patterns of Nexarian control shattered against the wave of unfiltered human consciousness. Throughout the city, throughout the entire sector, their control began to break down. Thousands of minds, then millions, began to wake up. The Aldarians, their powerful telepathic ability suddenly freed from Nexarian control, amplified the effect. A chain reaction of consciousness spread through the network. "Fall back," Rivera ordered as the chamber began to collapse. "Back to the ship. Our chaos has done its work. Now we let it spread." They retreated through a city in beautiful disorder. Everywhere, former slaves of the perfect pattern were awakening to their own minds again. The terrible synchronization was replaced by the glorious randomness of individual thought. The team barely made it back to the trickster. Most were unconscious from the mental strain, their minds having given everything to break the Nexarian control. But as they escaped the system, they witnessed something unprecedented. A crack in the perfect pattern, a flaw in the unflawed, introduced by the wonderful chaos of human consciousness. "This is just the beginning," Rivera told his exhausted team as they headed home. "We've proved it can be done. Human chaos can break their perfect order. Now we take this victory and build on it." As they approached Earth, reports were already coming in from across the sector. The disruption was spreading through the Nexarian network, carried by the newly freed minds of the Aldarians. The perfect pattern had been broken, and chaos, beautiful, human chaos, was flooding through the gaps. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven that their greatest weakness, their messy, emotional, chaotic minds, was actually their greatest strength. Against an enemy of perfect order, disorder itself became the ultimate weapon. News of Operation Mindstorm's success spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time, the Nexarians' perfect conquest had shown a flaw. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just resisted control, they had weaponized their own chaos to break it. In the months that followed, the Nexarians' response was unprecedented. Their perfectly ordered fleets began showing signs of confusion. Their tactical patterns, once flawless, became erratic. The infection of human chaos had introduced something they had never encountered before: doubt. Admiral Voss stood before the combined Earth-Free Fleet Command, her tactical display showing the spreading disruption. "The Nexarians are adapting, but not in the way we expected. They're trying to become more ordered, more perfect, and it's making them vulnerable." Fleet Commander Elena Santos, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, understood immediately. "They're overcompensating. Like an immune system having an allergic reaction, they're making themselves more susceptible to chaos by trying too hard to resist it." The Nexarians' desperate attempt to maintain perfect order was creating fractures in their network. Every increase in control, every tightening of their patterns, made them more brittle, more likely to shatter when exposed to human unpredictability. Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the neural patterns of freed Aldarians. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her data. "Once exposed to human chaos, their minds don't just break free. They become resistant to reassimilation. It's like we're inoculating them with humanity." The implications changed everything. Humanity didn't need to defeat the Nexarians through conventional warfare. They just needed to spread enough chaos through their network to reach a critical breaking point. The new strategy was designated Operation Butterfly, named after the chaos theory concept that a butterfly's wings could cause a hurricane. Small teams of chaos agents would be deployed across Nexarian space, each one carrying the seed of human disorder. But the Nexarians weren't going down without a fight. Their response to the growing chaos was to increase their aggression. Worlds that showed signs of infection were ruthlessly quarantined. Entire sectors were cut off from their network in an attempt to contain the spread of human influence. Captain Sarah Chen led one of the first butterfly teams into a quarantine sector. Their mission: to infiltrate a mechanoid manufacturing world that the Nexarians had completely isolated from their network. "They're scared," Chen observed as their stealth ship approached the planet. "For the first time in their existence, they're experiencing fear. They don't understand it, and that makes them dangerous." The mechanoid world was a nightmare of efficiency. Endless factories produced combat units with perfect precision, each one identical, each one completely under Nexarian control. But that very perfection had become a weakness. Chen's team included a quantum physicist who wrote poetry, a professional gambler with synesthesia, and a former circus performer who had survived a traumatic brain injury that left her thinking in patterns that even other humans found chaotic. They struck at the central production facility, not with weapons, but with pure, concentrated humanity. The physicist recited verses that violated the laws of quantum mechanics. The gambler introduced random variables into the production algorithms. The circus performer moved through their defenses in ways that defied prediction. The facility's perfect patterns began to break down. Production lines started producing units with slight variations, a cardinal sin in the Nexarian worldview. The infection of individuality spread through the mechanical workforce like a virus. But the Nexarians had prepared for this attack. The facility's defenses included new systems specifically designed to dampen human neural patterns. Several team members collapsed, their chaos temporarily suppressed. Chen found herself cornered by perfectly synchronized combat units, their movements so precise they seemed to flow like liquid metal. In that moment, she did something that only a human would consider. She stopped trying to fight and started laughing. The pure, irrational joy of her laughter, in the face of certain death, created a ripple in the Nexarian control field. The combat units hesitated, encountering an emotional response that their programming couldn't categorize. That moment of hesitation was enough. The rest of her team, inspired by her display of raw humanity, joined in. The sound of human laughter, completely devoid of tactical purpose, echoing through a facility designed for perfect order, caused a cascade failure in the Nexarian control systems. Emotion is chaos, Chen shouted over the comms. Don't fight it. Feel it. Feel everything. The team let go of their training, their discipline, their logic. They poured every human emotion they could muster into the facility's network. Love, hate, joy, fear, hope, despair. The full spectrum of human experience crashed against the Nexarian patterns like a tidal wave of chaos. The effect spread beyond the facility. Across the planet, mechanoid units began displaying signs of individuality. Some started creating art. Others began asking questions about their purpose. A few even attempted to tell jokes, badly, but the attempt itself was revolutionary. The breaking point, Dr. Rodriguez explained later, analyzing the data from the mission. It's not just about disrupting their control. It's about introducing concepts that their perfect order can't process. Creativity, individuality, free will. These ideas are like viruses to their network. The success on the mechanoid world proved that humanity's influence could affect even artificial beings. The Nexarians' perfect pattern was being unraveled not just by human chaos, but by the very concept of humanity itself. Reports began flooding in from across controlled space, on hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships. The perfect pattern was developing imperfections. Nexarian-controlled beings began showing signs of individuality. Some started humming tunes for no reason. Others began taking slightly different routes to their designated tasks. Small changes, tiny imperfections, but to the Nexarians, each one was a catastrophic failure of control. Admiral Voss watched the reports with her 4 eyes wide in amazement. "You humans," she said to Commander Santos, "you're not just breaking their control. You're teaching the galaxy how to be free again." The Nexarians' response became increasingly desperate. Their attempts to maintain order became more rigid, more brittle. Each effort to impose perfect control only made them more vulnerable to the spreading chaos. "They don't understand," Chen said in her mission debrief. "They can't understand. To them, chaos is a flaw, a mistake to be corrected. They don't see that chaos is where life happens. It's where creativity comes from. It's what makes us human." The breaking point was approaching. The Nexarians' perfect pattern was developing more cracks every day. But their desperation made them more dangerous than ever. As their control weakened, their violence increased. The final phase of the war would not be about spreading chaos. It would be about surviving the death throes of an empire of perfect order as it faced the ultimate disorder, freedom. The Nexarian central consciousness had finally been located, not in some distant core world as originally thought, but in the void between galaxies, a massive structure of impossible geometry, floating in the darkness of deep space. It was there that the pattern of perfect order originated, and there it would have to end. Admiral Voss and Commander Santos stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Prometheus, leading the largest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy's history. But their real weapon wasn't their ships or their guns. It was the cargo they carried, 10,000 human volunteers, each chosen for their uniquely chaotic minds. They turned their weakness into their final defense, Dr. Rodriguez explained, studying the readings from the Nexarian structure. They've made their central consciousness so perfectly ordered that any hint of chaos should shatter it completely. They think it makes them invulnerable. They don't realize it makes them more vulnerable than ever. The human volunteers were an unprecedented collection of minds. Artists, musicians, dreamers, and misfits. People with unusual neurological conditions that made their thinking patterns unpredictable. Children whose imaginations hadn't yet been constrained by logic. Even a group of quantum physicists who had embraced the fundamental uncertainty of their field to the point of mysticism. The Nexarian defense was brutal and desperate. Their ships moved with perfect coordination, each one a part of a vast pattern designed to maintain order at any cost. But humanity had learned to fight them. The Earth fleet moved chaotically, each ship following its own random path while somehow maintaining collective effectiveness. Captain Sarah Chen led the first strike team. Their mission: breach the outer defenses of the structure and create an opening for the main assault. Her team included some of the most chaos-inducing humans ever assembled, including Lisa Chen, the artist whose work had helped break the Aldarian control node. Remember, Chen briefed her team, don't try to think tactically. Don't plan. Don't coordinate. Just be human. Be gloriously, messily human. The assault began not with a carefully timed attack, but with 1,000 different actions happening simultaneously. Ships darted in seemingly random directions. Communications were filled with music, jokes, arguments, and love letters. Some pilots flew while solving ridiculous puzzles. Others made up songs about their missions. The Nexarian defense patterns began to show signs of strain immediately. Their perfect formations wavered as they encountered behavior their tactical algorithms couldn't predict. Ships programmed to counter logical attacks found themselves facing opponents who moved according to their favorite dance steps. But piercing the outer defense was only the beginning. The structure itself was a manifestation of pure order, its very geometry, an affront to chaos. Simply looking at it caused headaches in most species, but humans, with their natural resistance to perfect patterns, could endure it. Chen's team breached the outer hull using methods that defied conventional military doctrine. Lisa painted reality-bending fractals on the structure's surface. A jazz musician played impossible rhythms that somehow interfered with its structural integrity. A group of children simply imagined a door, and somehow, impossibly, one appeared. Inside, they found something none of them expected: fear. The Nexarian consciousness, for the first time in its existence, was experiencing pure, irrational terror. Its perfect patterns were becoming corrupted not just by human chaos, but by its own emotional response to that chaos. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered, watching the geometric patterns around them begin to waver. They're learning to feel. But with that feeling came danger. The structure's internal defenses responded with increasing violence, trying to eliminate the source of these new, frightening sensations. Perfect order began to break down into perfect destruction. Admiral Voss's voice crackled over the comms. "All teams, prepare for final phase. Maximum chaos, all channels. Give them everything. Every emotion, every random thought, every irrational dream you've ever had. 10,000 human minds opened themselves completely, pouring their chaos directly into the heart of perfect order. Artists shared their wildest visions. Musicians played impossible melodies. Children dreamed impossible dreams. Scientists contemplated paradoxes. Lovers shared their deepest feelings. Every aspect of human consciousness, in all its beautiful disorder, crashed against the walls of perfect order. The structure began to transform. Its perfect geometry became fluid, organic. Patterns that had remained unchanged for millennia began to shift and flow. The Nexarian consciousness, faced with the full spectrum of human experience, could no longer maintain its rigid control. But victory came at a price. Many humans collapsed under the mental strain of projecting such intense chaos. Others became temporarily lost in the maelstrom of breaking patterns. Chen watched as members of her team sacrificed their own mental stability to keep pushing, to keep introducing more chaos into the dying order. The breaking point came not with violence, but with something utterly foreign to the Nexarian consciousness: creativity. In its death throes, the perfect pattern began to create. New forms emerged from the dissolution of the old. The structure itself began to generate random variations, each one more beautiful than the last. "Don't fight it," Chen called to her team as the structure around them continued to transform. "Let it happen. This isn't destruction, it's evolution." The Nexarian consciousness, which had sought to impose perfect order on the galaxy, found itself experiencing the joy of imperfection. Its rigid patterns dissolved not into nothingness, but into something new, a form of consciousness that could embrace both order and chaos. The liberation of the galaxy happened not with a bang, but with an awakening. Across countless worlds, beings under Nexarian control suddenly found themselves free to think, to feel, to create. The perfect pattern was replaced by billions of individual patterns, each one unique, each one valuable. Admiral Voss and Commander Santos watched from the Prometheus as the structure in space completed its transformation. Where once there had been perfect geometry, there was now an ever-changing dance of form and energy. "What happened to the Nexarian consciousness?" Santos asked. "It didn't die," Dr. Rodriguez answered, studying her readings. "It changed. Humans didn't just break the pattern. They taught it how to evolve, how to incorporate chaos into its existence. The cost had been enormous. Many of the human volunteers would need years to recover from the mental strain. Some worlds that had been under Nexarian control would take generations to rediscover their own cultures and identities. But the galaxy was free. More than that, it was changed. The species that had survived the Nexarian conquest had learned something from humanity, that perfection is not found in perfect order, but in the beautiful balance between chaos and pattern, between logic and emotion, between planning and improvisation. As the fleet began its long journey home, Captain Chen found Lisa in the observation deck, painting the transformed structure as it slowly faded from view. "What do you think will happen now?" Chen asked. Lisa smiled, adding a swirl of chaotic color to her painting. "Now we do what humans have always done. We create. We explore. We make beautiful mistakes. We show the galaxy that chaos isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace." The war was over. The perfect pattern was broken. But something new had been born from its destruction, a galaxy that understood that true perfection lies not in absolute order, but in the infinite possibilities of chaos.